I think that people consider healing something a little bit more over the counter
Hmm.
than it really is.
Hmm.
Just like I was saying that it's these little imprints that you start to recognize throughout your life. You don't know what can feel easier until it feels easier.
Hey, beautiful. Welcome to Naturally Empowered Living, your safe space to guiding you on your unapologetic self awakening journey. This is your weekly sanctuary for waking up from autopilot and transforming the way you approach life through the power of meditation, energetics, and root cause therapy. It is my mission to help you heal unprocessed emotions and release stuck energies by alchemizing your struggle cycles into opportunities for deep self love, awareness, trust, and connection, to return to your innate essence of being, stepping back into your energy of alignment. Because here, we honor all parts of ourselves, the messy and the magic, the shadows and the light, embodying all parts that make you, you. So if you are ready to get to the root of cultivating real change, get cozy, grab your journal and maybe favorite crystals, and let's discover our power within together. Hey loves! Today we have a very special guest on the show. This is a new type of episode that I'm bringing to Naturally Empowered Living, where I will actually be bringing in people who I have worked with to have them share their stories before they started working with me, as well as their journeys through to the present time. Now, as this is a completely different type of episode that we have never really had on this show, I believe it warrants a special and additional kind of disclaimer. These episodes are a space for people to share their unique stories and their journeys through life, as much or as little, as deep or as surface level as they choose to. This is something I cannot script nor direct on how they are going to communicate, on what they feel comfortable in sharing in this space. So this is your discretion to be aware that we all have different stories and experiences and beliefs. And these stories shared by those who come on the show are ones to be honored in their own way, as well as held in a respected container because they had the courage to share in the first place. So please honor and respect our guests, and please honor and respect yourself. Each story is our own. Thank you. Now, let's dive in. Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Naturally Empowered Living podcast. This is your host, guide, and mentor in all things energetics, emotions, and self awakening, Jenna Smith. And today's episode means so much to me. Oh my gosh, I am joined by Rachel, who has completed a 5-session root cause therapy package with me. And I don't want to jump into too much of her story because this work is so deeply personal. Her experience deserves to be told in her own words, through her own body, her own awareness, her own discernment. But what I do want to offer before we jump into this episode is a little bit of grounding around what root cause therapy actually is, especially if you are just finding this podcast for the first time, or maybe you haven't heard of what root cause therapy actually is. So, root cause therapy works with the subconscious mind and the nervous system to really locate where emotional experiences were first stored within the body. Often, this might be early in life, maybe even before we had language or even conscious understanding, or possibly even generational imprinting or past life if you are privy to that too. But these unprocessed emotions, let's say, that get kind of stuck or stored within the body, these emotional imprints, they then can quietly start shaping our patterns, our reactions, our relationships, our sense of who we are in the present moment. So rather than just talking or trying to analyze from the mind, from the top up approach, this work really allows us to get down into the body, to really revisit and resolve what hasn't been completed, what hasn't been processed, what hasn't been dissipated and alchemized. So this brings regulation, clarity, a sense of safety back online. We're not reliving, we're not rehashing experiences, but we're rather allowing that nervous system to release what it's been holding on to so it no longer runs the show within our present life. So Rachel, say welcome to the show, welcome to the episode. I am just so happy that you're here and that we're able to connect again.
I am too.
Yeah, let's jump in. If you just want to give a little bit of context into where you were in life, or what was that deciding factor of really starting to work with me or jumping into root cause therapy.
Okay. Um, well, I was really in through not so wonderful events, but very fortunate to kind of find my place in life, one that had me exploring a lot of spirituality, a lot of questioning why my emotional relationship with my career, my work, was weighing so heavily on me and really directing who I was and how I felt. It was very obviously to me a codependent type of relationship, but I struggled to understand why I wanted my relationship with work to have so much purpose. But at the same time, I didn't know what that purpose was. And a lot of the research I was doing was very self-driven. It brought me to a multitude of spiritual practices, and really looking at it from top to bottom through the lens of different religions, philosophies, structures, looking into the neuroscience of creativity and anxiety. And I was really just kind of skimming the surface when I happened to come across your work. And there was something that just resonated with me, certain kind of turn point moments in my life that I couldn't put a finger on why they held so much impact for me. And that's really what drove me to reach out to you.
Yeah.
I had jotted a few of them down and was like, this woman knows the answers. She's going to help me find them.
I just got chills. I remember that first like clarity consult call and we were just talking because I remember like being in your shoes, obviously, like we're, two totally different paths, but like I remember going down that religion rabbit hole. I remember like wanting to learn everything. And it just I really resonated with your story. Um and it was just, yeah, right when we had that consult, I was like, I'm really excited to work with her.
Yeah, I mean, it was a surprise to me because I've never been a religious person. I always felt that there was more to life, but the way that I was raised with religion wasn't terrible. It wasn't great. It just was not interesting to me. There
Mhm.
was nothing I could connect to, and it seemed bizarre to me that people around me were connecting. So I don't know. It was just something I really wanted to understand more of. I remember that conversation very well too.
Yeah, and you were just like, "Hold on, let me jot that down." And I was like, "Oh, she's like even writing notes." I was just like, "She's so me," or "I'm so her." Oh, I love it. So let's kind of go back in time a little bit. And do you remember like how you felt, prior to root cause therapy? You dived a little bit, but if you don't mind going a little further into like how you felt within your body, like was it anxiety, was it stress, was it self-doubt? Like where kind of were you in that felt sense prior to starting root cause therapy?
It reminds me of a phrase that a friend and I coined when we were much younger,
Mhm.
where we would talk about feeling kind of like a shaky battery.
Mhm.
And so, like, to us, that meant like something that was charged and inside this little cage that a battery fits into, but not quite fitting, not quite connecting. And so, in general, that's how I felt. I felt a lot like a shaky battery, like there was something active, but not touching.
Mhm.
Um, and that had a lot to do with my intuition, feeling sure of myself. I was in the process of making some major life changes that were affecting me, physically, mentally, chemically. Um, and I wanted to really take the time to make sure I was touching down where I meant to. It was one of the big first points in my life where I had the chance to decide what that looked like.
Mhm.
And in deciding, I had a lot to learn.
Yeah. Oh, that was so beautifully said. Like I was picturing that in my eye or in my, mind's eye. That's just such a beautiful because I'm thinking back to our first session, second session, third session, and that confidence, that self-trust that was like starting to blossom. And it was just such a beautiful unfolding. Oh, it just brings me back. Like it's so emotional. Oh, so, so beautiful. So now kind of let's fast forward. We'll kind of jump back and forth, right? We'll jump back, to prior to root cause therapy, during present time. So then once you started root cause therapy, what were some of those like maybe light bulb or aha, or what was that felt sense as you're like getting into those first few sessions?
That's a great question. Because I feel like I really delegated a lot of that work to you, where I didn't, I was coming out of somewhere where I was like, okay, someone's got to tell me what to do,
Mhm.
but I want to give my opinion on what that lesson plan is.
Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, we really started with getting into like what it felt like for me to be vulnerable, if that was safe, if it wasn't safe. And I don't remember if that was the first, second, or third, but our path really kind of like waterfalled from one into the next really organically.
Mhm.
So I began with vulnerability and intuition and really focused on how to trust myself. And if I already kind of held my ideas, but was letting them become scrambled by exterior influence.
Mhm.
I think really one of the more powerful pieces, when I knew that I made the right choice with this type of therapy was pretty pretty much at the start of doing that sway test.
Mhm.
I had heard you talk about that before, and when it was true, I was like, oh, okay. So there is kind of like this pendulum inside of myself that's already just knows. So let's just go full force ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point too, because a lot of people within that first, session, it's a big like a self-discovery. Like, all right, I'm
Hmm.
just trusting you, kind of like what you said, like I'm giving this to you, right? Like you're the expert here. Like you tell me what to do. But then when we actually stand up, because you obviously are the one doing the work, I'm just guiding you. So when you stand up and then I explain, what this a muscle test is, like this is you. This is truly, and you said like, oh, that pendulum inside you, it kind of turns that light on a little bit. Like, huh, this is me. Like this is me. And to have that self-discovery of I do have the answers inside of me. Because you're not the first person that has said that muscle testing or that sway test was like a really big, like pivotal moment of like, wow, you know, that's awesome.
Yeah, it brought me like that specific thing has kind of carried me or influenced me pretty heavily over the past couple of months, and I think it will continue to.
Yeah.
Where, in therapy, in it, like most practices, it's like, okay, so you have to do the work. And there's always that phrase, the work. And, during this time, I was doing, like, I don't even know, I was doing so many different things that were just like this major investment in myself, which feels so kind of silly to say because who does that? I was constantly reading. I was going to multiple types of therapists. I was spending a lot of time meditating and thinking, and that always kind of felt like this journey that someone else would take.
Hmm.
Someone else has the time for, and like, how could that possibly sync up with the regular things that you do in daily life, like taking care of your toddler and doing dishes and slicing apples, making grocery lists? That always felt like some kind of like sacrifice that you would make to the rest of your life to just embark on a journey. And kind of combining those ideas had me realize, doing this work doesn't feel like work,
Yeah.
or at least to me, it didn't. It was building this, not even quite a practice. It was just this dedication to doing something over and over again. And that seems so simple, but it's a really big difference because people say like, okay, so work is hard. But when you combine that with curiosity, it's just the most natural thing.
It is. It is. And that's something you just said this, like it's simple. It's truly simple. Like once you see it, you can't unsee it type of thing, right? But it's
Hmm.
really to help someone uncover that, to let it be, to bring that wall down, to build that confidence, to turn that light on, to awaken that sense of that self-trust, that self-connection. The connection is that first piece. Like the connect, and that's what the sway test really does. It's a self-connection ritual to understand like this is me, this is inside of me, and
Hmm.
truly very simple. But it's, I mean, simple does not always equate to easy, right? We live in a society that is so external, is so expectation driven, is so, you know the word is not coming to me right now, but to really step outside of that box, to turn inside,
Hmm.
to deepen your own pathways for that self love, trust, connection, confidence, all those things.
Yeah, the world is so noisy
Yeah.
and continually gets noisier. And then on top of that, just is like that kind of nasty cherry. It's all of this information comes in like, okay, don't pay attention to it. And what's the first thing you do when somebody tells you not to do something?
Right.
You're at least inclined to try.
Hmm.
And so, don't listen to everybody else. Okay, well, so I'm gonna have to at least know what I'm not listening to.
Right.
And it really becomes kind of this moment of, you know, it always reminds me of the Lion King when Rafiki just swats you on the head and is like, okay, so think of this now. And once you get that, you can open yourself up.
Yeah,
You can accept other information and be open to being teachable.
exactly. Exactly. Oh, so were there, to kind of stay within this duration of your sessions, were there specific moments or realizations within our work together that really made significant differences for you? You really talked about the sway test, that first session, but were there other maybe integration periods or even moments that you went back to? You're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, right? What kind of things have really had that pivotal core within you?
So for me, I don't think I had, session to session, I don't think I had major moments. I had changes and I was surprised that, going back and identifying these, whatever these memories were, whether this life, previous,
Mhm.
however obscured, I was surprised that I wasn't going back and harping on them. There
Mhm.
was nothing in me that felt like I needed to.
Mhm.
They were there, they were accepted, and they were done. And that lightness is what I remember the most. But that being said, there are so many times since then, I'll recognize myself. I lived in Manhattan for 12 plus years. I became kind of scared to drive once I started doing it again.
Mhm.
But I'll find myself now during a commute being like, I'm really great at this.
Mhm.
And, I'm a regular driver. There's nothing to write home about, but it's those little moments of confidence, like those little tiny breadcrumbs that I find to be the most striking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just had this flashback. We talked about this in those first earlier sessions where you're like, there aren't these huge, like, boom, aha moments. It's these little compounded events, these little aha moments. And I should pull up my notes because I feel like I remember writing about it. But we had kind of a little tangent conversation within one of our sessions about that, to where it's in the little moments. Like, what are those cliche quotes? Like, the little moments mean the most and all these things. But it's so true because these little, call them triggers, call them imprints, these little patterns within you. And you're like, oh, I thought something different this time. Oh, I
Hmm.
felt something different in my body. And that is the neuroplasticity at work. That is the rewiring that we do within the sessions itself, right? You hit the nail on the head saying when we're going back and releasing said emotion and and we're in that event, we're processing the emotions. It's not like there's no blame, there's no resentments. You might be feeling those in the moments, right? That's what we're releasing. That's what we're really allowing ourselves to get in that soma, get into that somatic experience, that felt sense, to release that blame, to release that resentment, to release that anger, and then underneath it, not saying that, certain events are ever forgiven or are ever okay, right? There's very traumatic events, but within our bodies, we release that hold that they have on us.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And I do think if it was like a seismic shift, then the release would be jarring,
Mhm.
right? That would make you unsteady. But it is these little compound moments, the imprints you're talking about. That's the experience that you have day to day.
Yeah.
That's where the big shifts occurs when you experience life differently in a slow, measured way. And I think for me, and probably for a lot of us, we're looking for those instant gratifications. And that's something I was actively working to train myself out of.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's made a huge difference in my life.
That's incredible. Let's go into this a little more in terms of how you respond now to your stress, to those emotions, to possibly that, low self-esteem or low self-confidence, low self-trust moments of how you would react in the past versus now. Um, do you want to share any certain examples or even just share it kind of umbrella wise of how any differences that you've noticed?
well, I've noticed a ton of differences. Um, so I mean, I certainly didn't stop the research that I was doing as we were working together. And one of the things I learned that neuroscience teaches us is that our brains are not able to be both anxious and creative at the same time. So to me, creativity means it in simple terms, it's just curiosity. And when you're curious, you're willing to learn, you're willing to be flexible, adapt, change your opinion, and take in other people's ideas or just other experiences without judging them or without personalizing them. And that's where you grow and adapt.
Mhm.
There's so many just absolutely incredible stories about this that aren't mine that are coming to mind. But I can say for sure, I've been able to enter an entirely different field of work. And when I'm confronted with some kind of challenge that has me feeling an emotion, I'm able to very quickly step back and think, why am I like, why is that hitting me? This is not about me.
Mhm.
This, in fact, has nothing to do with me. And that touches on so many different things, right? Like that's taking my ego out of this. That's understanding what I can control versus cannot. And that's really being able to do what like to be empathetic in an actual way, in a true way.
Mhm.
Because if I'm in the middle of my empathy for someone else, like that's not empathy. That's not understanding. That's not curious. And now I'm forgetting your question, but that was kind of the answer that came to mind.
Absolutely. It was just in terms of responding to stress or emotions, but no, you hit it, and that's exactly where that was answer was led to be, and that it's so so true. And how I just love, I feel like we're just meant to stay kind of right here. So how that shows up in your real life, outside of the session. So, when you're in the thick, because you mentioned you were in big life transitions in multiple areas of your life, right? So as we're, because we worked together for a few months. I'm trying to think, because it was through the summer and then we took a little bit of a break and then we came back. So in between these sessions, and you're noticing, on your commute or just these little imprints, really diving into your daily life or relationships, personal goals, how you parent. How does this work embodied into who you are today? Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Okay, well, I guess going back to life transitions, I was in a position where I kind of gave away a lot of my voice,
Mhm.
both accidentally, on purpose. I've got to take responsibility for that in so many different ways. But because of that, I felt like I didn't have the trust of people around me.
Mhm.
And, earning that back isn't as simple as saying, "Hey, I'd like to have that. Let me prove it to you." I think it's mostly about demonstrating that it's available. That if you'd like to gift me back with that or gift it to me for the first time, I will treat it carefully.
Mhm.
And, in that there's a multitude of ways to feel, right? Like I wanted it. I really wanted to have that voice that I knew was somewhere. But, in between sessions, I would find myself almost without, not impulsively, but coming from somewhere akin to that, having the right thing to say or
Mhm.
standing my ground where I felt previously I wasn't able to or shouldn't.
Mhm.
So being able to take up my own space and to give feedback to other people on how I believe a situation needed to be handled, about how, my daughter's time should be treated. She's 3, so, I do have a lot of say in that right now. I don't expect that to last much longer because she is vivacious, to say the least. And that was a really big and important piece because getting your voice back when you feel like you don't deserve one or haven't earned one in a while, you lose a lot of confidence. You lose a lot of faith in, not having confidence. That's across the board.
Yeah.
That's in your decision making, your ability to be financially free from other entanglements. all the way down to, okay, is this the right time to shower? Because I might influence somebody else because they might have to take this over for me if I do that. And it's this huge if this, then that game that you balance. And it's so time consuming. It opens all these mental tabs that are just irrelevant.
Mhm.
So that was one of the biggest intermittent shifts. And I think that I love talking to you. So I almost intentionally dragged out our sessions so that we wouldn't have to stop having them.
I love it.
But like, but those are some of the things I noticed in between was just like those little moments and, going even deeper into the timeline after we began working or after we ended our sessions, I would find myself in these like really like intense conversations with the clients I work with, the patients that I work with. And I would almost have this moment like, wow, did I just say that? Like, who said that for me? Because I don't think I fully formed this thought internally
Mhm.
before it came out of my mouth. But it wasn't nonsense. It
Mhm.
was like these were real words and good advice. And I could see it on their faces. This is taking the situation and reflecting it back to you. And, I work with a hard group of people who aren't really interested in changing their lives and they don't think it's possible.
Mhm.
So it's something that resonates with me. But again, like, taking myself out of that place of ego and just being fully honest. Like I swear to you, it's almost like out of body experiences that I've had where I'm like, who said that? And did someone write it down for me, please? Because I'd like to know what it was.
Uh-huh. Oh my, I'm getting teary-eyed because that is truly listening. That is getting out of your mind. Oh, what am I going to say next? Oh my gosh, she's almost done talking. Well, how am I going to respond to this? And truly getting into the felt sense, into the entanglement, energetic entanglement of that conversation that you're having with the other person, and your soul is speaking. Your soul is truly the one, because I'm always like, oh shit, what did I say? I gotta write that down. Like what you just said. I'm like, who just said
Mhm,
that? And it's such, I always say, I'm like, I even tell my kids this all the time. I'm like, guys, mommy doesn't have words for this right now. Like I feel it. Come over, like come sit by me and like let me just sit in your energy for a minute and gather the words because sometimes I don't have the words, but I have that knowing. And
mhm.
it's so, oh my gosh, you just said that. And I'm just like, such an important piece to touch on, but also like kudos to you. Like that's so incredible.
The first time I felt that, I was like, do I need to talk to somebody about this? Like, who can I call up? Because that was so interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable because you're like, I didn't have thoughts in that moment, or I didn't have this well curated, like, because I'm the queen of lists, I'm the queen of writing things down, and I have to physically, intentionally tell myself, Jenna, allow what comes to you to come to you. Allow what is meant to be, to come out. We always don't have to prep and prepare and XYZ, but that's that typical Virgo moon in me. Like everything is like needs to be like ba, 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 ba. So
Mhm.
I totally resonate with that. Hmm.
Yeah, I think it brings you into the present much more. And I like a lot of people just say like it brings you into gratitude, and I do believe that, but I'm not that's not my most favorite thing to say because I think it's just it ties it up a little bit too neatly.
Yeah.
But you begin to recognize the magical moments that are around you,
Mhm.
and there have been so many.
Yeah, exactly. A big thing, this is a complete tangent, but as I'm in a house full of people, I'm at my parents, we have, so many kids running around downstairs, so if there's background noise, that's them. But it really allows me, like what you said, just with presence, to see like it's not just me and what my reality is. There's my sister, there's my mom, there's my niece, my nephew, and we all have our own realities, and we're all going through life in our own journeys. And it really just brings light to like what you just said, the present. Like I know that you were kind of talking maybe a little bit more self presence, but it's like an embodiment piece. It's this
Hmm.
piece of being and of acceptance of someone else's life or thoughts or whatever. And that's something that I mean, I still am constantly learning and constantly like I love that you're like, I was still researching and doing my own, like side stuff at like during our sessions. That's amazing, right? And we're gonna take what resonates with us and we're gonna take what lessons and what where we're meant to be in the present moments. And that's a big piece of where I'm at currently in my life is really like not putting myself in someone else's shoes, but just like having that just compassion, just the understanding, of everyone else's lives too. Complete tangent, but
No, I think that ties in really closely to what we're talking about, though,
Mm,
because, being in the present and being aware of other people, but not letting their existence and their feelings clutter yourself,
yeah,
like that makes your voice, your inner voice clear to you, and
yeah,
then you can pass that on to them.
mhm,
It's the whole concept of having your cup full before you can fill anyone else's.
yeah, exactly. And just speaking to have all these little minds and little, strong, vivacious energies together, living in the monotony of our home, right? Like the sibling rivalry. Well, now I have, there's little fires that you have to put out, and I'm like, sit down, let the 6-year-old talk and then the 7-year-old talk, and let's get our stories out. How did you feel? What was your experience of it? Because it was completely different from someone else's, even though you guys, fought about the same thing. You guys each had a different experience and perception of it. And I just thought of that example from last night because it's just like both can be true. You guys both had your feelings, and now let's work together to either get to a solution or just to compromise or whatever that is. So yeah, it's beautiful.
It really is.
Yeah, these little brains. So thank you so much like for sharing so honestly, just generously. And I have one more question just to kind of zoom out a little bit because I know there's so many people listening to this episode that might be curious about this work, that might really resonate with your experience, but may also be unsure or hesitant about possibly starting root cause therapy or any modality, any healing self-exploration modality. So for anyone listening who might be on the fence of kind of taking that first step within their own healing experience, if someone was considering root cause therapy or any modality, what would you want them to know, or what would you want to share based on your experience?
That's actually a tough one because I think that people consider healing something a little bit more over the counter
Mhm,
than it really is.
mhm,
Just like I was saying that it's these little imprints that you start to recognize throughout your life. You don't know what can feel easier until it feels easier.
mhm,
And feeling more confident, feeling more seamless, feeling like I've I'm on this path to be who I was trying to be as a child. Yesterday I read this quote that was like, there are only two opinions who you should ever really care about, and that's what your 8-year-old self would think of you, because the sky's the limit,
yeah,
and then what your 80-year-old self would think about you, because that's the one who's going to be judging you for not making the ch like taking the chances that are available. And we were just talking about this a little while ago. What are those things that you would have tried but did not?
mhm,
You know, we were talking about being opportunistic. So you can be opportunistic, and a lot of these things do kind of fall into your laps, but it's a lot about deciding to make a choice and trusting that there's something to learn from that choice. So I don't know, for me, what root cause therapy has done that no other therapy has done, and I was doing all of them, which I both recommend and do not recommend. But it's given me a really good understanding that there are things that have influenced me that I cannot control and did not know about,
yeah,
but they don't need to hold me back. And understanding that they were, and truly a lot of that comes from already being involved with it. Understanding how much lighter you go along the way is something that's hard to imagine until you start doing it.
mhm,
So if you're on the fence, I think that it's just the most worthy thing that I've done in the past, certainly the past year, but maybe in my life.
yeah. Just thank you so much for your openness and just putting your trust in me. And that's working virtually, right? We're states away. Gosh, I would love to meet every single one of my clients in person. But to be able to put your trust into someone and have that willingness to share, not only on this podcast, but within our sessions together, it's such an honor to me, and it's an honor to witness. And it's just such beautiful, deep, I mean, life-changing work, and that sounds so cliche. Like, I don't even like to say the word healing because, like what you said, like it's like an over-the-counter healing. It's like a buzzword. I don't like buzzwords, but I feel like they're easier received, right? Because they're
Mhm.
well known. But I just thank you so much.
Yeah, they're cliches for a good reason, but it's the feeling that you get as an individual is so much more powerful than that.
Yeah,
And I always find myself wanting to find that exact word to articulate it absolutely the best. But even if I did, someone else can't hear it the way it feels to me.
exactly. Thank you for saying that. Very, very true. So thank you for being here. Oh, thank you so much just for sharing everything and for our experience together, for your experience. I just am so, so honored to have been a part of it. And thank you to our listeners for also being here, holding space with us, and for doing your work, going back to doing that life work, whatever that is for you, to really be the truest, most aligned, embodied version of yourself, to really hold that trust and love within yourself. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you too, Jenna.
And until next week, as always, simply be you. You have everything inside of you to learn your energy of alignment and be unapologetic in who you are. We're sending our love and so much light.
Did you find this episode free or empowering? Please read my review. Tickle, 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 boop.
Thank you for spending the sacred time with me on Naturally Empowered Living. If this episode brought you closer to stepping into your energy of alignment, I'd love for you to leave a written review and share how this show has supported your journey. Your feedback truly lights me up and helps others find the space of transformation. And sharing it with someone who might need it spreads the ripple of healing even further. Be sure to check the show notes for ways to connect with me and explore personalized healing sessions and mentorships to deepen your self-awakening journey. Thank you. I appreciate all you are and all you do.